Happy Saturday! How's it going, everybody? Games by Design is here. I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Suda.
And we're going to talk about last bosses. And we've been waiting for this for a while. Hey, Board! Hey, everybody else in chat. Let's get some basics set up here. Hey, Glenn Kahn, how's your weekend shaping up, buddy? Anyone with the link can view. Perfect. Going meh. Well, let's see if we can fix that. Thanks, RageBot. Thank you very much. All right.
RageBot, this.
Before we really dig into just naming bosses, though, we should probably cover our analysis side of the show. You know, we don't just talk about games blindly. We actually try to help people get better at understanding them. So, first question right off for all those people just joining the chat. What makes a good last boss?
For anybody who's here and wants to throw in some of their ideas, it would be very much appreciated. But one of the things that I think makes a good last boss is it needs to fit with the rest of the game.
Same mechanics / style? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Fit thematically and story-wise. Build up to the boss is important. Build up to boss is important. Hey, Much Woke, nice to see you today. Fit thematically, story-wise, is that... We'll add it as well. Should fit the rest of the game.
Different from style.
Yes, I agree. Mechanic and style, we're talking the physical way of interacting with the game.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too long, but it also shouldn't be too short. I've had it a few times where you get all hyped up for the final boss, and then it's over within like a minute or two, and you're just kind of disappointed.
Yeah. Must fit the story / setting of the game. Yeah. Yeah. That's what makes a bad... Let's put that under what makes a bad last boss. What makes a bad last boss?
Bad
Bullet,
last boss.
sponge, no bueno. But, I mean, we've complained about bullet sponges a million times. It doesn't matter if it's a last boss, a first boss, an enemy, a player. Bullet sponge is bad. Not take 7 hours to beat. Yeah, so we'll do that, but we'll also say not too long. Not too short. It's the Goldilocks length. I like that Rage talked about fitting the rest of the game. You know, I think we can reword this better. Let's break that out into a couple different ones. Use the mechanics built in the game. We'll also test the skills the player has developed in the game. One of the biggest things that drives me crazy. You go all the way through the game, you get to the last boss, you've been playing the game this way your whole time, and then they're like, hey, it's something big and special and new. Throw everything away that you've learned and do it this way. How are you testing anything? This isn't a boss. This is just another event for me to do.
And while in this specific example, it very much was a test of skill as well. That was one of the things I didn't like about Doom Eternal's final boss.
I knew you were going to use that one.
Because that fight was difficult. It was. You had to be good at the video game to beat that boss. But it was just kind of lame. It just wasn't very good.
The problem is it did test all the skills. Like, it actually meets most of the stuff under the good, other than it's kind of too long, I felt.
It probably would have been better if it was broken up into like proper phasing rather than just it bullet sponges into like the first phase is, get the armor up, second phase is shoot the skin, but it's like the same level. It would have been nice if they kind of moved it and then maybe had a level that's a bit more, flat and open for jumping around and using those mechanics, and other ones, a bit tighter corners and kind of change things up a little bit. It was too long for what it was. The length overall, isn't super terrible, but they need to at least change things up halfway through, so you're not just kind of slugging on and dredging on fight.
Also, the whole game, every time you went back to your space station, they had you look at a giant badass robot battle suit. Never got to fight in it.
Yeah,
That's a good point. That's a good point. Though I wouldn't want necessarily. Actually, maybe if you throw it on for the last boss, activate some new abilities, but you don't want to throw the new abilities in at the last boss. Still, you see? Not really the boss itself, but the ambience, sound effect, and
you
music.
just get a big shotgun, and you fight the boss in a mech suit. Like, that would be badass.
I'll bet that'll be DLC. So Much Woke saying not really the boss itself, but the ambient / sound effects and music should add to the hype. I'm going to say that is the boss itself. The boss isn't just an enemy. The boss is an encounter. It's an experience. The music, the sound effects, the process of getting there, the video leading up to it, the after effect of the boss, all of it matters and counts in that encounter.
And it can be argued for some games that the final boss isn't necessarily like an entity you fight. There's a lot of kind of, platforming games where like the last level is technically kind of going to be the last boss, or there'll be a certain area at the end where, you're going to have to test all the skills you've learned. You're going to have to be able to, do this obstacle course within a certain time constraint with every sort of kind of obstacle that's come up in the game at the final part. Sure, it's not really a certain entity you fight, but overall it is just kind of this last challenge and testing of your skills that you've learned through the experience.
We played a game on stream that is a good example of what you're talking about. And I know you were about to say Celeste, but Ori does the same thing. That final run in Ori where you're running away from the water or the fire chasing you at the end, going all the way up, you use every ability you pick up in the game. Every mandatory ability is used.
And you got to be good at it. Otherwise you die.
Yeah. That's what we're talking about when we say test the skills of the player. That's a great last boss. I agree. That escape sequence in Ori is a boss. 100%. It's something that starts from the beginning to the end. It's all pre-planned. Every inch of it is experienced. You're not fighting something, you're escaping, but that's the game. You're not really fighting things in the game anyway. You're running and escaping and getting through things and unlocking things. That's the skill that they want you to build and develop throughout the game. That's the skill that they test at the end of the game.
Can any of these things that make a good last boss be subverted and the last encounter is still good? I would say yes. One of my favorite examples of like a weird and not great boss, but still a perfect ending to a game is the final boss of Dark Souls 1.
I think that's the final boss still.
It's a great last boss, but it doesn't meet these criteria. The build up, yep, that's there. The story setting, yep, that's there. Test the skills, use the mechanics, yeah, okay. Not too short.
It can be too short, but most people didn't experience it too short. Most people got wrecked over and over and over again and had to get through it. And I would say that he does test the skills developed by the player in the game, because if you've been going through the game building your timing on the parry, you're gonna wreck him. He rewards you understanding all the game's mechanics.
Yeah.
But I understand he was kind of like, once you're good at it and you get to the end and you're just parry, kill, parry, kill, parry, kill, parry, kill. Yay, I'm done. Yeah, it can be kind of underwhelming, but you had to get there, and it's the reward for getting fucking good at the game. But also interesting that he's one of the few bosses you can parry.
Even though that he subverts some of these even some of these expectations that he subverts, I still think he fits the game perfectly. He should be easy to kill.
Yeah,
I think
difficulty
that is
isn't
true.
part of a boss. Note that nowhere on the good last boss does it say difficult. Difficulty is not important to a last boss. It's not. In fact, one of my favorite games that Pookie insisted I put on the list, and I didn't argue with her once, because I 100% agreed with her, is a super easy last boss. Once you understand what's going on, it's fucking simple. Secret of Mana.
Oh yeah, a fantastic last area, but it's not hard.
No, it's not hard at all. You have to figure out what's going on in the last boss. The last boss fight in Sonic Generations is also awful. I'm going to ask you more about that because I don't know anything about it. The Destroyer is awful. B1, I literally always think of him. Oh, Borderlands 1. Okay, I didn't play it. One of the meanings of test the skill is difficult, but it's not the only meaning. Yeah, it can be intuited that way. If the game is built on difficult mechanics, then the boss should test those difficult mechanics. And he does, you know, if you're good at parrying, then it's highly rewarding. I'm glad that they can parry him. I really am. I just
think it's weird that he's the one boss that you can parry. Like the whole game they've been training you that you can't do this, and then he's the one that you can, and it absolutely demolishes him.
I agree it's strange, and I think that they should have included a parry on humanoid bosses to condition the player to know that they can parry all humanoid things for when they get to the boss. But that's another talk for a couple weeks from now when we talk about player conditioning in games and how games teach you to play.
I'm also really looking forward to. I think that's going to be a really good one.
Yeah, people are going to be a little surprised by what player conditioning is actually involved in, and when we talk about some of the games you've played and you start realizing what they were doing to teach you how to play it, you're going to be like, oh, interesting. And thank you, Space Ghost, for the host. Sorry I missed it. We were in the middle of a thought. And Val, thank you for the host as well. Welcome, Val viewers. We're talking about last bosses. So Secret of Mana. Does anybody know the last boss of Secret of Mana other than people on the panel? And Pookie, who told me to put it on the list. Who knows the last fight in Secret of Mana? Nope. It's an interesting one. You're about to learn something. So everybody knows the game Secret of Mana, right? 3-player ARPG. One of the big selling points, big factors, big deals about the game is that you can multi-tap and play 3 people at the same time.
Which was dope.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a big mechanic in the game, getting to have all 3 people, and you can control the other 2 sort of, set their AI, and it was pretty good control. I mean, I hate AI controlling people on my team. I loathe it. It's not a bad thing in games. I just loathe it. I like having control of my characters. So the fact that I found it unoffensive in Secret of Mana says big things about that. But, so you get to the last boss, okay? The hero has the Mana Sword. It's the only weapon that can hurt the dragon. The only one. However, it doesn't actually do anything to the dragon. There's a spell that the sprite has and a spell that the girl has, and they both have to cast their buff spell on the sword. And when both spells are cast on the sword, so all 3 players are working together, the sword awakens and becomes empowered and can hurt the dragon. It's like 5 hits to kill it, 4 or 5 hits. It dies real fast. It's not a hard fight. You've got to figure it out, and you got to use everybody's abilities together. In a game that was about multiplayers and interactive, they managed to make the last boss require all players. Everyone's important in it. That's a good last boss right there. That's how you do it.
Oh. Fantastic design.
Does anybody have some more goods?
A couple other things added in here. Much Woke brought up boss fight mechanics and arena mechanics. Not necessarily essential to have, but can be very, very nice to have in a boss fight if it's something that you have already exposed the player to.
And if you are going to do it, don't give them all hitboxes and collision boxes and physics and ragdoll. Please. Bosses need frame rates. Thank you. Looking at you, Twing
as far
Twang.
Yeah. As far as bad bosses, Space Ghost has brought up the Destroyer from Borderlands 1. Yeah, I agree. That was a terrible boss. However, fuck, I can't remember what the actual name of that boss is. I always used to just like flub his name, but the hidden raid boss in Borderlands 1 was real good. Liked that fight a lot.
That's one that I'd like to do another day as well. Hidden bosses. Totally different than last bosses.
Yeah, totally different thing.
I've got a few more on my list, definitely. Destroyer should have been something that walked. I don't know the fight. Rage knows the fight.
Yeah, the fight is a like sort of, I guess, Lovecraft-ish being that's coming through a portal, and it's like stuck halfway out of it, and you're fighting it like that. So it's just a stationary thing.
Okay. Because I really liked the Destroyer type being in Borderlands 2 that we fought. Or no, 3. 3.
Yeah, the ones in 3 were actually quite good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the gunplay and the boss encounters in 3. They were good. But last bosses specifically. We don't have a lot under bad. I mean, most of it
basically anything made by fuck, who are the people who made Uncharted?
Naughty Dog.
Anything by Naughty Dog. All of their final bosses have been bad. All of them.
I have a list of bad final bosses. I'm just kind of waiting for everyone to cover theirs, just in case there was any overlap. But some of mine are doozies. But I will jump into those whenever.
Do we want to start with bad or good? What do you think, chat? Do you want us to talk about what the good bosses that we loved are and then go into the bad, or do you want us to go over all the bad shit first?
I'd say let's do a compliment sandwich. Let's talk about stuff that makes bosses good, talk about bad bosses, and then talk about good bosses.
Okay. We've talked about what makes them good, so let's talk about the bad examples we have then. Well, let's just go down. We'll start at the top and work down. Are you guys good with that? I want to throw a boss on there. It's one that we've played. It's one that we all saw. It's one that I've bitched about a whole lot. Damn you, Stan! And it wasn't even the floppy horse cock that bothered me. I was fine with that part. It was the fact that they took away all of the abilities that I had been building for the entire game. Now, if you've played it, you're thinking, they don't take anything away from you, and that's fair. They don't take anything away from you. But the whole game, I built melee, and I wrecked things with melee, and I had fun with their melee. It was my favorite part of the game. And then we get to the last boss, and they're like, okay, use ranged.
And just kind of go, no.
So phase 1 sucked, because I had, like, no ranged skills. Like, no ranged skills at all. Any boss that devolves into too many QTEs. Yes, that includes Guitar Hero. Hey, Wicked. Welcome. But yeah, Satan, first phase sucked for me. It took forever because I had to perfectly dodge everything because the amount of damage I dealt compared to the amount of damage he dealt because of how I leveled my ranged was worthless.
Minuscule.
Worthless. So every time I got hit, I was like, oh, I've lost like a quarter of my health. And I've done like a tenth of his bar to him. Oh no. Then we got to phase 2 where they used the melee part. And then I fucking cleaned his clock first try. And then we went back to phase 3 where it was a whole lot of ranged and a little bit of melee. And then I had to master everything again. And it was fine. Like, I don't mind having to master it. I just felt salty because I wouldn't have had to if I had built my character another way. If you insist on this and letting the character build anyway, then make it so the boss can be fought either way. Let me use my melee on him. Please.
Or just
that's how I liked it.
Give you the thing that makes you good against that boss. Like having a character that gets a final weapon or something is not a bad thing. That is a trope that has been used in many games. And it means that no matter how you built your character, you can fight that last boss. You can do it.
Yeah, that would be a great solution. At the very end, as he's fighting Satan, he's reached a gun. He's reached a level.
Devil May Cry.
He's reached a level of his crusade that heaven actually helps him, and that's what the ranged side was. And it just brings your skills up to a baseline. I'd be good with that. I think it would, I don't know, make the boss far more reasonable and still on theme. Although it throws out a lot of the actual Dante's Inferno story, which, the last level basically did anyway. I don't remember anywhere in Dante's Inferno where the hero had to juggle enemies for 30 seconds. Just saying.
It's true.
Okay.
I still like the just make it into Devil May Cry idea. I
can't argue with you there. Well, feel free to add your boss, sir. I've got one more boss I want to add, but we'll see. Pseudo's got a bunch for it.
I've got probably one of the worst bosses of all time, which a lot of people don't know about. I'll save the worst for last.
Pseudo. You go ahead.
Okay, I'll start with my personal least favorite last boss experience, which was probably
put it on the page.
Fallout 3. I should probably get that link. All right.
Actually, yeah, Fallout 3 was fucking terrible. But I mean, it's not like the last boss was worse than the rest of the game.
Yeah, but it wasn't like there's the part before where you get Liberty Prime walking through, which is kind of cool and all. It was just it builds like it was this huge build up, this huge kind of fight that's going on. It's oh my god, it's kind of neat. Everything they were doing what you would think would lead up to like a kind of a finale, right?
Yep.
And then you just go into this room. You have a bit of a bit of a dialogue with the end characters a little bit, and then you just kind of shoot a person, and that's it. And they died just like everyone else was. I guess it's consistent.
He did have twice
He
did have twice as much health as the rest of the enemies in the game because I one-shot everything in the game with my plasma rifle, but him, I took 2 shots.
Oh, I got a crit, so he just died.
And
it was just okay. Like it built up, right? There wasn't anything special. It didn't set up like some sort of like air stage at all. It just kind of like happens, and then the chef's kiss of shit on it was just then the game ends for you originally before they released the DLCs and patched it. It just you can't play anymore. That was just it. So typical games like this, especially in Bethesda fashion, you would quick save before then, and usually I wasn't expecting it just to soft lock me in there if we saved in there, and there wasn't really like much of a warning if I remember. It didn't warn me being like, oh, you can't turn back. This is it. Like a lot of games,
absolutely no warning.
Even like Doom Eternal, like it's like, hey, you can't come back once you do this, and it gives you a thing like, oh, if I want to do all the side stuff, thank you for letting me know so I can still play the content I want to play rather than going right through the story. And it just was a terrible taste in my mouth. Another last boss from a more recent game was from Remnant from the Ashes. It was an okay game. Like I enjoyed it. I played it it was a 3-player kind of co-op third-person shooter, and it was a decent experience. It had a lot of issues, and it was a bit repetitive, but it was like, when you have friends, like even like the worst of games can become fun. But the last boss was just like completely jarring from the other experiences, and the main mechanic was it basically just teleports one of the players into another room, and they have to kill a bunch of the enemies that spawn in there as well. I think they had to like activate or pick up some item, and that's what allows you to damage the boss. But it wasn't very clear at all. So, and then just shooting the boss doesn't do damage, but you feel like you might be doing damage to it because it's doing a little bit of damage, but not enough. So it's hard to judge if like, hey, maybe this is just a super long boss fight, and we just need to like slug it out for like an hour or something, rather than finding a mechanic that makes me do more damage. And then also teleporting a random player. And initially, for the first 2 attempts we did for it, I never got teleported in. The RNG just never put me in there. So I never learned that the current loadout I have just was going to destroy me in there because it was kind of mostly like a sniping, like single action shot. But in there was just a lot of enemies. So you get kind of get wrecked. And if you die in there, it basically will wipe the run. And it which is a weird experience. The boss itself is just like they try to build up to it, and it's kind of a bit of a twist, but it just doesn't really kind of make sense, and then it's just kind of over. And it was just not like what's the problem with like having a bad final boss is you can have an okay game, but if you have a terrible final boss, it can ruin the entire experience up to it. Even if you have like a good game, a bad enough final boss can really kind of turn the tide, and it's kind of the last thing you'll remember. That last experience you had with it was just it was just bad, and it affects the whole thing.
That's an MMO mechanic they were using, by the way. Been
Yeah,
used in a
yeah.
lot of MMO bosses.
Yeah, and I was playing with the people that I used to raid with, and like it's like, okay, we need to up our damage, but it just wasn't super clear. Eventually, we found it. It turned out later that the boss was bugged because we were playing it on release, and the mechanic that was supposed to give us the damage just wasn't triggering for, I guess, certain weapons, which was cool. There was also a weird glitch where I would just be always on fire and just slowly die. It's just you just start dying. And like, well, is my fire gonna go out? It's like not until you respawn. It was I don't know. It's one of those things like I kind of break games, but overall, like it was a bad experience. But the worst boss I have ever tried was Drakengard 3, and I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Oh yeah,
I've probably heard the game or played of it, but the game is more of like an action fighting game, and then the final boss is basically like a Guitar Hero. I don't know what to call it, a rhythm game. I don't know if you can pull up links or not. I'll try to explain it if you can. But the boss is so hard, and it's such a different mechanic from the entire game that there's actually a YouTube video that gives you a timing guide on how to beat the final boss. Because basically what the final boss is you're flying around this giant kind of creature, and it's kind of expanding rings around. And then when the ring goes to hit you, you need to push a button. I think it's just X to activate your shield so you don't take damage. And if you get hit once, you're done. That's it. And then it starts kind of blocking your line of sight so you can't see what's coming up, as well as some of the rings are just straight up invisible, and some of them, the timing is just off. So you can't just do it from the game unless you really do trial and error. And it's like a 9-minute boss or something like that. It's like 10 minutes long, which is just brutal. And I think at the very end, there's like one last one that's just invisible with no audio cue at all, and it can just like kill you. It is just.
It's so troll.
Yeah, it's my friend was like, "Hey, can we beat this? I'm going to bring it over. We can try it together." Because you have to be able to use the audio guide, you have to sync it up perfectly, and then basically play Guitar Hero. To not even look at the game, hoping that it's synced up right, and you can see that like your depth is changing and stuff like that, so you can't get a consistent timing on it. It's just complete garbage. And if you look at what the rest of the game is, it's just a fighting game. It doesn't prepare you for this really like at all.
Yeah, no, this is a completely different game than the rest of the game.
And it's just not good. Like it's like you could beat it, but it's just like it's terrible. And I think I gave you the timing guide, and the timing guide of 130,000 views. Like there's a lot of people who just you can't do it. And if you want to beat the game, right there, like look at like that part right there is just nuts. It's just. I
like how there's the last ring that comes out while you're off screen. That's great.
There's still rings going on right now, and you can't even see yourself. It's just focused on the face of the boss as it's sending rings out.
It's nuts. And there's some that are off screen, and it's just this is, at least for me, the worst boss experience I've ever had.
This is pretty bad.
Especially for it's a fighting game. I can understand if maybe this was like my friend got me into this. I'm like, why have you done this? Why would you expose me to this?
Yeah,
it is a neat game, and it's got a good fan base for it, and there are people who appreciate it. But man, this was just it's kind of in the style for this.
Let's actually grab some mid-game gameplay.
I linked you one, I think, in our Discord there.
This is what the game is like when you're playing it. Like the whole game is this. It's completely different than the last boss. And this is what you'll do the entire game until the last boss. Only the last boss changes to what we just watched.
Like
you would swear they're not even the same game.
I think there might be some parts that maybe are close, but overall for like a last boss, you would expect it to be not that, at least, and not 10 minutes of it. Like that a 10-minute, even like Guitar Hero, if the last boss was 10 minutes, that would be way too long. And it's one button. You push one button for 10 minutes. It was just like I don't know if that would ever actually be like enjoyable, and I feel terrible for the people who had to play test it. Like I don't know how this happened.
It makes me wonder if they did play test it.
They probably playtested it just to say that they playtested it, and when the playtesters all went, "This is terrible," they went, "Ship it."
They went, "Too bad, you're shipping it."
So I linked the timing guide, and it's pretty basic, but you'll see like what it is, and even with that, like even if it properly shows you what it is, it still gets pretty hard because it sends a lot of stuff at the same time, and I just don't get.
This is how you beat the boss. And yes, 132,507 views on this.
Wow.
And it's not easy to start the boss and start this at the same time either. You have to like sync them up perfectly, let alone like actually play like match the game up. It is we tried for like a couple of hours and I kind of just called it. I'm like, man, these are hours I'm never gonna get back, and I'm not gonna get anything. It's like I am not invested enough to do this. This is just brutal.
No, it says we did it in Drakengard 1, so haha, it's back. Was this in Drakengard 1 as well? That's unfortunate.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. This is I'm with you, Pseudo. If somebody asked me to beat this, I'd be like, no.
Like I say, it does have a fan base, and they do expect it, so it's not too much of like a why they go into it with like a bit of an expectation for this, but it's still just not a huge excuse to have it be like
No,
this.
it's
like, even if you wanted to have a rhythm section, at least have like a mechanic. This is just
or have it not be the final boss.
Yeah, it was just
like how about that? How about it's not the final boss?
You know what? If this was a hidden boss, I'd be totally okay with it. It'd be a great hidden boss. Great hidden boss.
Like look at this part. You can't even see yourself. It's just like the jump cuts, and oh my god, I could rant for days.
I can tell that just watching this is triggering you. I can see it. You're like,
hours, man. We got pretty far in it, and it's so disheartening just to like mess up at one part because you mistimed it. Even just like it was, I can't. I just the salt life. If you ever want to be cruel to someone, just like make them play this game.
Yeah, so once all the PS3 challenges start coming out, as the PS5 comes out and becomes more successful, and people start trying to take on this generation, Drakengard 3 is what you want to request. Get those PS3 people playing this, and let's see how they do.
Yeah, but basically, like I said, it kind of covers our criteria to a T of just like what not to do for a last boss.
Oh yeah, it hit almost every checkbox on what not to do. Use the mechanics built in the game? Nope. Test the skills the player has developed in the game? Nope. Build up to the boss?
Yeah, like kinda, but it's not really much there for the actual payoff of the build up.
Fit the story and setting of the game? I mean, I'm sure there's a reason for why it goes like that, but the rest of it is all like Battlefield stuff.
Yeah.
It's not too short, at least.
But it's definitely not in the Goldilocks zone.
Maybe a little too long, though.
Definitely hits the too long, though. And, I mean, it's not bullet sponge, but it's not even a health pool. Which everything else in the game seems to be, mostly.
Yeah, there's no being good at the game will not make you beat the boss faster. Everyone will take 10 minutes to beat it. it is
a minimum of 10 minutes to beat it.
Yeah. A boss that puts all the skills you've learned in-game to the test without being overwhelming about it. I think it's fine to be overwhelmed by a last boss if you haven't mastered the skills and he comes at you with all of them.
As long as it's not cheap. I don't like it when they kind of like cheat the mechanic. Like all of a sudden, we have the same mechanic, but now it's just going to do like 3 times more damage, so it's like an artificial difficulty rather than, like properly test your abilities to dodge and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then we're just getting into encounter creation period, which we've talked about before and gone over those. I'm happy to beat them home again. Hopefully a developer is listening and gets the point. Makes a better game. back to me. And it's a shot at the whole game, not just the last boss. But it drove me insane, and that was Grandia 3. I don't even remember the name of the last boss, and it's a shame, because Grandia 1 and 2 are great. But the boss has a mechanic that nothing else in the game has that one-shots you. In a JRPG.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So at the very, 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 very beginning of the game, they go through the list of abilities, and you have one called Move that changes your position on the battlefield. And then they don't use a single enemy in the game that actually matters where you're standing on the battlefield for the whole game. The whole game. You didn't need to use it once. Like, if you use attack, you just attack whatever you're attacking, just like a JRPG. And you go back to your old spot, for the most part. You know, it's not like Move is this obvious mechanic in the game, but it is a thing. And then the last boss puts this circle down on an ability, and it's a fairly faint circle. I didn't notice it right away. And if you're still in it at the end of his turn, you die. Couldn't figure out why the hell my party just kept dying. Yeah, I just wiped like 2 or 3 times until I went back in and went, oh, I have a move ability! I forgot about that one because I didn't use it once. It was literally the first time I'd used the ability in the whole game. The whole game. It has been there, admittedly, staring at me, but when you've been looking at it without using it for so long, you don't think about it. It just becomes this background thing, like that menu option at the bottom that I never use. That's all it was.
One of those, I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I don't know what it is.
Otherwise, the boss was fine. It was bland. It would have gotten an okay in our charts, but that requiring this mechanic that you've never used, like if it was actually used once in a while, a few enemies, you know, maybe an ability in each area you can get out of, things like that, little rewards for it here and there, it would be fine. It would have been a perfect, it would actually improve the whole game and added more strategy to the whole game if they would have used that ability more. Yeah, and then instead they just ruined the game with the one ability that could have saved it by using it once and killing you with it over and over. Well, I think it killed me 2 or 3 times. That's over and over in a JRPG. I don't usually die 2 or 3 times in a boss. One trope I've always had a love-hate relationship with is boss rushes. A lot of the time, they make no sense in a game. Like, you completely destroy these bosses earlier, but now they're back with zero explanation. It kind of donkey punches immersion sometimes. That's, like, it's a totally fair opinion, but I think it's just a personal taste kind of idea. Some people love the boss rush, some people hate it. It's a thing, it happens. Not every game has to make perfect sense, and actually, Mega Man even explained it by them being rebuilt. They were machines, so.
And I mean, a lot of games, I can totally understand a boss rush not suiting your tastes. But for me, if a game is a boss rush, like just the whole thing, I'm happy. I like that. That's good. It's a good time.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just a personal taste kind of thing. Some people love the boss rush, some people hate it. And it's totally fine to not like the boss rushes.
I didn't mind it in Mega Man. I thought it fit okay. Like, okay, now I have to, kind of beat them consecutively. But there have been some other games where they'll just kind of rehash a boss back without anything really changed. Just, I guess to add in some filler content and to kind of expand out that last encounter. And at those parts, it's kind of just cheesy. You're like, well, I've done this already, and now there's absolutely nothing different to it. I'm just doing the same thing I did before. Just, I've already beat it once. I know I can do it. It's just kind of a minor inconvenience at this point before I get to the actual finer encounter. I don't mind if they rehash it, but at least change it up, maybe make them a bit stronger or add something different to it, or I've had it where it's just the same. They'll just throw the same kind of couple bosses at you in a row, and it's like, okay, I guess this is just flashback central. But
my personal favorite way to use the boss rush is to not give the player healing between them. and just like demonstrate your skill. Like, okay, you've gotten here, you've beaten the bosses enough to get through them. Now show that you've gotten good enough at them to really progress through them. You've gained all this extra power, so you should be better at them. You've already got their strategies. A demonstration of knowledge of their skills.
Guns are rough. I always get frustrated with those because you can screw your run over so fast. But I guess that's the point, is you need to be able to be good enough to not get wrecked in the early game. But like, man,
yep,
it can.
Don't make your mistakes.
Like one wrong move and it's like fun. This is fun. I play games to have fun, right?
Yeah, and
who does that?
Everybody has fun differently, as we know. Still need to play
BioShock 1 final boss should be on the bad list.
It was fine. Maybe a little too short. It was still took longer than anything else to kill, really.
Thinking back to what I remember of that playthrough, because it's been way too long since I've actually played that game. Nonplussed. I wouldn't say bad, but just kind of like, meh.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. It's gray. It's definitely not black, but it ain't white. It's just in the middle.
So this whole time I've been scrolling through my library trying to find games that I didn't like the final boss of. And all of the games that I have that I actually finished had good bosses.
Yeah.
A lot of them I just didn't finish because I was like, nope, not enjoying this.
I only had a couple bosses really to add to the bad last bosses, mainly because I focus on positive aspects of a lot of things, and I don't remember a lot of bad last bosses. They had to be pretty bad and stand out. Fallout 3 was definitely one.
Most of the games I played don't even have final bosses. I found when I was scrolling through mine, because I mostly play like sandbox games, so maybe I've just been burnt too many final boss experiences, and I just subconsciously just avoid that stuff now. Yeah, I'm going through it, and like I've got quite a bit of games. And I'm like, man, none of these have really a final boss. There's a few of them, and a lot of the time it's mostly just final level rather than an actual boss, and it's not so much of like a rehashed mechanic. It's kind of like you complete it.
Did you play too many Naughty Dog games as a child, Pseudo?
I have beaten all the Uncharted games, so that does help. It is.
No, I'm done. I'm done with boss fights. I don't need them anymore.
Let's get bullet sponge, or let's get shoot this thing a bunch of times, or let's just get the quick time events just out of the way. The Yakuza series actually has decent bosses, decent final bosses. They do a really good job building it up. They'll even have you fight some of them midway through, and they get stronger as you do at the end. And those games kind of center around having multiple fight stances, and you can get really good at a fight stance and kind of talent it out and get a bunch of abilities. But there are certain parts where it just makes sense to use, there's a fight stance that's just like ratchet super fast, and you can go in combo heavy and lots of dodging. And there's one that's kind of like it's a brawler where you're slower, but you do more damage, and you can swap them on the fly, and they'll do a good job at, having the boss also have stances that they can go through, which you'll kind of have to mirror or counter, which I thought was good. Like that's probably one of the more recent games I've played that had a decent couple of final bosses.
Sorry, Val was saying Arkham Asylum had some weak-ass bosses. They basically reskinned the same Bane fight like 4 times with different character models, even the final fight. Now, I'm okay with there being some samey bosses. I'm okay with that. But don't do it to the last one. Make the last one unique.
But not too unique.
Same mechanics, but unique fight. Something we haven't yet seen. Something we're going to have to learn. Not just, oh, I've already seen this before. I know how to deal with it right away. That's no good. Loved the game, but the bosses were a big weak point. I already knew you were a big fan of that one, Rage. I didn't like the game myself. I've bounced off it real quick.
I enjoyed it for all the things that weren't the combat.
Yeah,
which is an odd thing to say for me, but I
it
really
is.
like Batman. I'm just a big Batman fanboy.
I'm not a big superhero fan at all, but if I am forced to choose a superhero, Batman is definitely one of the ones I gravitate to. I like most of the movies. I like Batman as a superhero because he's not actually super.
He's rich.
Yeah,
The superpower of money.
it is quite a superpower. Warhammer 40k Space Marine, one of my favorite game, has an awful final boss. Link above.
You just endlessly smash him in the face. Quick time events, oh boy.
Punch, 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 punch. Dodge. Punch, 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 punch. Dodge. Punch, 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 punch. Punch. Headbutt. I mean, like, I feel like it's trying to do the whole God of War thing,
Yeah,
but just not doing it well.
no. Definitely gives a God of War feel. Fable 2 final boss. I didn't play Fable 2 because Fable disappointed me so much.
Yeah, I never actually played the Fable series.
I was a really big fan of the original Fable. And its final boss was pretty decent. There was quite a bit of build up to it, and it is fairly difficult. It does kind of test everything that you need to do. I don't really remember too much of Fable 2 because that one was, to me at least, wasn't as didn't embrace me as much as the first one did. But I do I do remember the Fable 2 final boss not leaving the best taste in my mouth. It was
Kind of disappointing.
not a fulfilling experience. Yeah, the first one was super epic. It kind of builds up this whole game. It introduces or starts hinting at the big bad right out of the gate. There's a choice you have to make near the end. That's like, do I do this like bad thing to make the final boss fight easier, or do I choose the kind of good way, but have an actual big challenge on my hands? And it was a neat way of presenting, and it made choosing the harder way and then being able to still finish the boss a lot more satisfying than kind of making it so you can have it a bit easier and making a sacrifice if you so choose. I thought it was presented at least very well.
Fable 2, you get to the end and it was like, shoot him, and if you don't, this guy will.
That sounds like a pretty pathetic last boss, yeah. Gears of War 2 then came with another bad final boss right after. Didn't play the Gears series. Not a big duck and cover shooter fan. Not a big shooter fan in general.
I played the first Gears of War through on Xbox and remember nothing. It left no impression on me.
Probably why you didn't play the second.
The first one I think was okay because I think General Rom's the first boss, or the last boss in the first game, and it's kind of a bit of an epic encounter. I believe it's on like a train, and he's fairly difficult. But I think the other ones from there are just they just give you a bit of a mechanic that you just kind of just have to use, and that's just kind of it. Where it gets a bit cheesy, rather than having like a proper fight with everything that you've kind of built up through the game.
So a game with a known boss trope that we haven't touched or talked about at all. How do you guys feel about the Resident Evil boss tropes of fight it until they give you the weapon that kills it?
I think I'm fine with it, honestly.
It can be done well. Like it can get definitely overused and be kind of cheesed out. But I mean, for the most part, it can at least kind of make sense. It could kind of boil down to I mean, it's kind of just the end, right? Sometimes it can be kind of really fulfilling if you're fighting a boss and then you're doing the same thing over and over again. Then all of a sudden, okay, you did it one more time, but this time that was the time that takes them out. You were shooting them like 100 times before, but this was the magic bullet that was just the final pushing point. It does kind of make sense that at least you can fire them to a point where you're just weak enough that they're like, okay, well now all this kind of special thing falls on. Most of the time it's just an RPG. If it's Resident Evil, you use just to shoot them and blow them up.
I was talking specifically just about the trope Wicked, which actually goes back to the very, very first Resident Evil game.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah,
it's
they throw you the weapon that can actually kill the boss near the end of the final boss, and then it's just, hey, you won, you did it, you beat the game.
But I'm with
You did
Pseudo.
video
I do kind of like it more than the idea of, shooting them with the same thing over and over and over again, and eventually, this is the bullet that broke the straw that broke the camel's back, per se. I like that they can maybe shorten it, make it make sense. It's this big super thing, but oh hey, a rocket launcher. It is a bit of Deus Ex Machina. It's admitted, the definition of Deus Ex Machina is that trope. Okay, but Deus Ex Machina is not necessarily a bad thing to use in writing. Can be used well.
Yeah, they can definitely set it up a certain way where it's not just like all of a sudden it happens to. They can hint at it beforehand, being like, hey, your Deus Ex Machina is coming in, a little bit. You just need to survive or fight them off until the mechanic kind of shows up, and it kind of gives you the idea. Or maybe they have the weapon out in front, it, and then maybe when you first start the encounter, you try it and nothing happens, and it's like, oh, he needs to be weaker before this, or we need to maybe activate some other stuff so that we can finish it. So I think that the trope can be done, but it also most of the time is done terribly, where it's just a bar that goes down before the cutscene just triggers.
Got to use the holy arrows. Yeah, that a lot of Zelda games, it's typically more go and find the item yourself. To clarify, in case anybody's confused about the term, Deus Ex Machina is a writing term which translates to God from a machine. It goes back to old stage plays when they would literally use a machine to lift the figure playing God out of the bottom of the stage, and he would just appear and the good people would win. And the story would just take a quick turn. A good example in semi-modern movies is War of the Worlds, where right at the very end of the movie, they're cowering for their lives, and then they wake up one day and look outside and the aliens are just dead. They've died of a disease. They caught the flu or whatever was going around and had no immunity to it, and the people just win. That's Deus Ex Machina. Something that just pops out of nowhere and just happens, and oh hey, the good guys win. For some, anyway, Link to the Past. I love Link to the Past. I know all the bosses well. I don't remember anything quite like we're talking about. You do have to go find the item that will hit their weakness, but that's you going and finding it yourself and then bringing it to the encounter. This would be more, you're about to die, and then all of a sudden something triggers in the game, and you get healed and given a holy weapon, and then you attack them once and they die.
Yeah, I think Wicked was just a little off on what we were looking for as the definition of Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. Saitama shows up and kills the bad guy in one punch. Yep.
Yeah, but that's funny though.
they do that kind of okay for the video game as well. I think we've talked about the mechanic before, where it's a timer.
Yep.
If you put that character on your team, you have one less character to fight with, but you get a timer. So now the other player has to, beat you within that time. Otherwise, you just get one punched, which I thought was at least a decent way of, managing his power, rather than just having him either be way too strong as a character or having him just be, weakened and then doesn't really fit the story or theme.
Yep. Like I said, it can be used well, and using it in an on-the-nose satire kind of way, it worked really, really well. It did. One Punch Man is great. Absolutely great. And the term Deus Ex Machina, in the case of War of the Worlds, used regardless of how much the sudden appearance would make sense in the context. Yep. Yeah, it doesn't have to be super sudden. You can see it, but there's no interaction from the people. There's nothing that the main characters could have even done in that writing to affect the story. It's really just about a bunch of people cowering for their lives until the aliens die off.
Yeah, it's just, oh no, there's nothing we can do. There's literally nothing. We're all gonna die, and everybody else died instead. We win. Yay.
It's more like the divine intervention of just, oh, okay. Ryder just decided to, out of nowhere, okay, I want to just, have it be good ending. Insert good ending here via Deus Ex Machina mechanic.
And to touch on Val's point of disliking time limits, I personally hate time limits as well, but It's a personal thing, you know. It's just my taste.
Yeah,
Not
it's
necessarily a
not-
terrible thing.
It's not bad. It's just a mechanic I hate.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're typically done pretty bad. It's usually when developers can't find proper mechanic from their toolkit to use, so they'll just kind of slap timers on things to
Make them
make the
hard.
game, make them harder, make the game faster, or add tension. They'll almost slap it in. But there are certain games that can kind of add it in. Like for certain games, like racing games, sometimes it makes sense to have a time mechanic. It's like, well, you're supposed to be able to drive the course under a specific time. It tests your skill. With the One Punch Man fighting game, it makes sense a little bit because you have a disadvantage of one less character, and now finals becomes of can you survive for the time limit. It doesn't fit the whole rest of the game, but they can't really have a One Punch Man game without One Punch Man, so it's kind of nice that at least we're able to include him. I do agree that time limits and escort missions are just the worst thing, especially with the typical escort mission AI.
DPS checks aren't a terrible thing, Rubido. It's just don't stick a timer on it. You can do them intelligently and create a soft timer. It's far less offensive to the player. It feels more like skill. Much more.
Cough, cough, 4 kings.
Yeah, that's a good example in single player. It's far more often used in MMO bosses. Far more often, where there's a stacking buff on the boss, for example. And every 30 seconds, he's going to get another stack of this buff, and it makes him hit 5% harder for every stack. Now, that's still a time limit, because if you don't kill him fast enough, he's going to one-shot the tank. And when he one-shots the tank, it all goes to hell. It's over. You're done. Talking about is the only one you liked. Yeah, but it's not a bad mechanic in MMOs, right? Like, the stacking buff, the stacking debuffs on the tanks is another example. I really like the stacking debuff on the tank idea because it's player manipulatable, so you can use skill to extend your timer. You can also take a lot more into account from a player comp status where you can bring more tanks in. It'll lower your overall DPS, but it'll give you an extra rotation of tanking.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And it allows you to interact with the video game.
Yep.
And last time I checked, video games are interactive media, which is something that a lot of developers don't consider. They'll just put like a clock that's counting down, and that's not fun. You can't do anything with that. You can't manipulate that.
A good example of that being used well with a timer in a turn-based strategy game, which I loved the implementation of, was XCOM and XCOM 2. They've got missions where there's a bomb gonna go off. Every round is one countdown of the bomb timer, but there's little nodes that if you're strategically pushing forward and pushing the enemy back fast enough that you can reach the nodes, they add more time by disrupting the bomb signal. So if you push hard enough and fight hard enough, you can increase the timer. Interactable. Some of the Final Fantasy games had terrible final bosses, 9 in particular. You spent the entire game having like 2 characters being built up as the antagonists. Then literally the final boss is something else entirely that came out of nowhere. Yeah, I didn't like 9 either. People always talk, oh, I love it. I'm sorry. Even the theft mechanic was terrible implementation. It's not a bad mechanic, but don't make me steal for 3 hours to get an item from a boss. Literally 3 hours. And I had the item that increased steal chance. This is why random stealing as a main mechanic is a terrible idea. And if I didn't get that ability or that mechanic or item off of that boss because of the way they taught abilities in the game, I would have actually missed an ability in the game. There was no way I was leaving without that item.
One game that Rubido hated that doomed all of your characters at the start of boss fights was Final Fantasy 13. The boss fights that I'm thinking of that they actually did that in was the summon boss fights. I'm not recalling any other ones. And the summon boss fights were a gimmick. They were gimmick fights. You just had to figure out what the gimmick was. Honestly, I'm fine with it.
You're halfway through the game, all
if
bosses
it's a standard Doom, you can clear it.
Yeah, I didn't even get halfway through the game. I got, I don't know how far through until I got to a map that is literally just a hallway, and I went, wow, they're not even hiding the hallway anymore, and I just stopped playing. That's literally how my thought process went, and I just put it down. How about invincibility phases in fights? It's boring.
That was particularly offensive because it takes away your ability to interact with the video game.
Yeah, it's boring. It's not great. I mean, it's not good in any boss fight, though, right? That's just not, not necessarily a last boss, just any boss fight, period. Those mechanics are bad. But yeah, I'm with you. Though invincibility can be used well at times when it makes sense, sparingly.
Yeah, they can combine it with other mechanics, right? Like maybe you need to do something else.
I'm not saying,
bosses
like we're talking
invincible.
about, invincibility doesn't have to be just invincibility on this thing floating there. Just like timers don't have to be a raw counting timer. The boss leaving the battlefield and having a way to be popped back into the battlefield is still an invincibility phase, but it's interactable and it's non-offensive. Yeah, he takes
like
off and drops things that you have to destroy, and when you destroy them, the boss comes back.
An avoidance phase or a mob phase, totally fine.
Yeah.
But if it's just like, oh yeah, the boss is just invincible now, that's terrible.
Yeah. Even time-based, if the boss took off for that time and you just had to survive that long until the boss returned, killing whatever else is spawning and dealing with that threat.
No, I know
it's
the
not
boss
great.
that Lencon is talking about. It is not implemented that way.
Yeah,
it
no,
just can't be damaged.
No, I know what he's talking about too. I've also played Destiny 2, and yeah. Don't worry, I'm happy to put a lot of the bosses in Destiny 2 on the bad. Unfortunately, MMOs don't have last bosses. Although we could consider an end boss of any major raid instance a last boss. How's that?
Yeah, I'd probably say that, like Lich King was probably a last boss.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, and Deathwing for Cataclysm. They do have a kind of a final boss, I guess, for the final.
Even Ragnaros, Seathun. Group them by story or raid would work. Yep. Another trope I've never been a fan of, you'll typically see in JRPGs, is the staged loss boss fights, where your characters obviously have zero chance and you're meant to lose. You could just drive home the same effect of the boss being too strong for you in a cutscene. Well, to be fair, that staged loss predates cutscenes. It was far more memory efficient to just, kill you in one hit. To get the point across.
It can be done okay as long as it's quick. Then it's fine. Like they just show up and wreck you. But it's when they hint to you that you might have a chance, but really it's scripted to fail because if you might have a chance, someone out there is going to do it. And I was one of those. I did that one time for one of the Dynasty Warrior games. I can't remember what it is. And for people who know that series, Lu Bu is usually one of the big bads that you have to fight. It's one of the strongest characters. And I didn't know that too much with. When I was playing with my buddy, and we spent probably like an hour or two just running up to him, fighting him, and then running away to heal, and then running back in to fight him. Because we knew we were supposed to lose, but we thought, okay, well maybe you can actually win. I was younger at the time and naive, being like, oh, they're not just gonna force you to. We ended up beating him. You can kill them, but the more you kill him, it just triggers the same cutscene where he defeats you as well, which just it's just terrible. It's just if they're gonna do it that way, they have to have at least be strong enough so he just immediately wrecks you. There's no point in giving you that kind of hope.
The same cutscene plays whether you win or lose the fight, but you can still win the fight.
Not actually true. Not actually true. It's slightly different.
Yeah, the beginning of it is slightly different. The net effect of the cutscene is still the same, so that you still get your ability. Though I'm absolutely with you, Glencon. I would have loved it if you win that fight,
and then the game just ends. It's just over.
Or he doesn't cut your arm off, but gets away with Kuro, and you get to do the game without the prosthetics.
Oh shit! I want that video game now.
Yeah. See.
Yeah, they could always do is like a secret boss, right? Because if the mechanics Like there's for a lot of the ways these games are set up, especially Sekiro, there's no way you're gonna be a master of those mechanics the first time you encounter them. So you're going to die. But it'd be nice if there was a reward that okay, I'm going through my next playthrough. At least maybe give me something or have like some sort of like special kind of ending that happens.
No, it's FromSoft. Make it harder.
Yeah.
You beat that boss early on, make it harder.
Maybe you just start going into more phases.
No. Like I said, you continue the rest of the game without tools.
Demon Bell, and you don't get Kuro's charm.
Well, you can do that anyway.
I want that. Yeah, but it's just automatic if you beat Genichiro.
I think they could have had some fun with the Genichiro. I'm glad that it is a slightly different cutscene. I do remember that. I always think of the main effect of it. But yeah, also not a last boss. Though we will be getting to that. Even Devil May Cry 5, you can beat the main baddie in the beginning, but it's really hard. That's actually what happens in DMC5 if you beat the main baddie in the start. You get an immediate ending and automatically unlock the hardest difficulty. That is great. I agree.
As you should. That is exactly how they should handle that.
Yeah, you're that good? Here you go. Any more bad? Or do we just want to start gushing on good? Does anybody... Pseudo had a bunch of bad he wanted to talk about. Do you want to make sure there's more on this list? It's all you.
Yeah, no, I could. Like I said, most of the games I played luckily don't have them too much. Most Bethesda games have pretty bad final bosses.
Bethesda games have pretty bad everything.
Yeah, I'm part of the team. Like I liked a lot of the stuff. Like I've beaten Morrowind, I've beaten Oblivion. I never ended up beating Skyrim, but that was mostly due to technical issues. But Oblivion was one of the ones that kind of left a really bad taste because they really kind of build up everything that's going on, but you're not really the main character in that one. This person you're kind of saving and escorting is, which it makes sense. And the final fight scene is one of the giant data princes, the giant demon that's roaming around destroying things. And you're like, oh my god, I have to fight that. And then the game's like, no, you just get to kind of live through a cutscene. You just kind of watch this guy grow big and fight it. And it's kind of neat, but like it's not a match fight. You just kind of sit there and just watch this thing kind of go down. And it's one of those like unsatisfying things too, where you can have like a kind of very mediocre experience, but if that final experience just isn't good, it will of course leave that kind of bad taste in your mouth. And I mean, there will be people who are arguing like it's part of the story. It's always have to be the main character, but it's also always nice to maybe have that option. Most of the time when you're playing these kind of horror fantasy games, is the point of it is to be that kind of power fantasy character rather than just some guy on the sidelines kind of watching someone else kind of have the fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more I hear people talk about Bethesda games' stories, the more I realize that they have a major running trope of you being the character that watches other people do cool things. Or follows other people doing cool things. Like all the Fallout games, I think would have been way better if I was the character that I was chasing after. Got to influence the world.
It's more like New Vegas. Everyone's on the same
level. No. Yeah, New Vegas isn't Bethesda though, right?
Yeah.
New Vegas is great. New Vegas felt more like Fallout 1 and 2 than any other Fallout. And that's a great game. Don't play Fallout 3 and 4. Play New Vegas. Yep, Obsidian. Did a good job. That's why Black Isle joined with Obsidian. They went, hey, you guys get it. Let's do something together. And they did. And it was great.
Trying to think of the other. There's my memory isn't fantastic. Plus, most of my games did.
Okay, well, nobody's really throwing anything bad in, so I'm just gonna go back into the good for now, and you can throw in a couple if they come up with you. But since we were just talking about it, Fallout 1 and 2. If you built strength, toughness, guns, weapons, you had to have the best of everything, good partner with you, as many as you can, everyone with the best gear, make some saves, because not only are you going to have the upper hand in every way you can imagine in gear, but you're going to have some lucky rolls. They were tough motherfuckers. However, you could also hack the security system around them. That was a good thing to do. You could turn it off, but if you were good enough, you could even turn it against them instead of it attacking you. If you were good enough at talking, you could actually convince them that their way was wrong. But it was not easy to do. You had to be pretty good at actually reading and interacting with the NPC who had hopes and dreams and aspirations and thought he was in the right. And there was actually a logical hole that you could use to convince him that he was wrong.
Which, is a little unrealistic. People who don't reason themselves into their decisions can't be reasoned out of them.
Not easily, at least. That's why
not easily, and it definitely wasn't easy to do, and you had to be masterful at talking skill to even unlock the options that would lead you into it. And it was like minutes of dialogue and options, and then if he does aggro you, which is 99 out of 100 endings of the communication chain, he murders you. He murders you.
I have seen several playthroughs of those games, and the final bosses are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so well done. But the whole point of it is to not fight it. You have to do lots of things. Like, to make those dialogue options visible, you have to go learn things about the world. You have to have done certain things to have the knowledge, done certain things to get you to a place where you can talk to him without aggro. There was almost a puzzle game within the action RPG to unlock the peaceful ending. Beautiful.
Fantastic.
Anybody want me to add some goods? Fallout 1 is good because there was like 20 ways to beat the boss. 1/2. Yep. That's why I got the 1/2.
Mike Tyson from Punch-Out, I think, was a good early example of a good final boss. It really makes you test everything that you've had to learn getting up to that final fight, and it is challenging.
Oh yeah.
It meant something if you're like, I beat Mike Tyson in Punch-Out.
Yep. To say you beat Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is still quite a badge of honor for most people. And he does use all of the mechanics of other enemies. He just changes up his timings and he hits way harder. So you got to learn them and you got to master them. He's hard. That's not a bad thing. You might not beat him. Most people probably won't. I beat Mike Tyson's Punch-Out blindfolded while someone else is controlling the other half of the controller.
Okay, GDQ.
That person was also blindfolded.
All those playground flexes.
Yeah.
But the obligatory mention has to happen. Dark Souls. Gwyn. Gwyn is a fantastic boss.
So we're saving Sekiro for a little bit because once that starts, we're probably just going to talk about it until the game giveaway. So.
Yeah. That's why I brought up Dark Souls first.
Yeah. just so everyone's on the same page, because that's a masterclass in final boss design, and it needs to be analyzed and broken down as to why.
And the little discussion we had earlier about Gwyn, him being Metal Gear Rising, I have a lot to say about that boss fight.
Okay.
I have a lot to say about that. Gwyn being not that powerful, him being, worn down by time, him being parryable because he's another humanoid, like everything about it just feeds into the ethos of the game so well. And it's just such a brilliantly put together fight.
Not to mention the atmosphere of the kiln of the final flame as you walk in a sea of ash in a dull environment, encountered by the keeper of the flame.
Plin, plin, plon. Plin, 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 plon.
Okay,
yes,
we've got beatbox.
One of my favorite bosses ever was Senator Armstrong in Metal Gear Rising, because it was so over the top. First you fight his Metal Gear, then you fight on top of his Metal Gear, and then you finally have a fight that plays out like something out of Dragon Ball. 100%. And here's why I think that's so brilliant. Because that whole game, the combat, the voice acting, the writing, like everything about it is turned up to 11. It is just so over the top the whole time. And then when you finally get to Senator Armstrong, they managed to turn it up to 12. Like, it goes even further beyond. That
Spinal
game
Tap
is
would be proud.
Brilliant.
Spinal Tap would be proud. I'm sure somebody at some point will be requesting Metal Gear Rising, because I have never even seen an action scene from that game.
I will teach you the basics of the combat because it's not taught very well, and then have at her. That game is fantastic.
Sounds good. Sounds good. You can go ahead and watch me just get my ass fucking beat for a little bit before you teach me. That's everyone likes to watch me die. Everyone likes it when Deus dies.
But like the Senator Armstrong combat involves, I think, every mechanic in the game. I think all of them. Yes, all of them. Literally all of them are in the boss fight. And it is very difficult, and you have to know what you're doing, and you have to be quick, and you have to be sure with your controller. You need to understand exactly what you're doing the whole time. And it combined with the music, the over-the-topness, just the intensity of the combat, like one of the better final bosses ever.
You mean Platinum knows how to make a good boss?
Oh yeah, they do.
Go figure. Actually, that makes me let's quickly discuss, because I think it was okay and it's a more recent game. What about Jedi's last boss? Did you finish the Jedi, Pseudo?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. I know Rage did.
Yeah, it was okay.
I think it would have been a great mid-boss.
Oh yeah, fantastic mid-boss. But as a final boss,
A little lackluster, but it did employ multiple mechanics. Not all of them. If there was more attacks for pull, some of the other force powers. But it was basically just a strong stormtrooper with a couple extra moves.
yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
Like it would solidly get an okay on our rating scale.
Yeah, I'd say so. There was a couple seconds of killed time. How long do you think we want to talk about Sekiro for?
I mean, we've got 15 minutes. We can totally talk about 15 minutes worth of Sekiro.
Seventh Sister, the big alien chick. That was okay.
Yeah, she was a good fight. I liked her and the bat. The bat was cool.
I hated the bat fight.
I hated the gimmick parts of the bat fight, but I liked actually fighting the bat.
Yeah, when I actually got to fight the bat, it was cool, but the what? I doubt you can talk about Sekiro for only 15 minutes.
Also true. But if you miss and just keep going and just clip out of the world and just keep going.
Yeah, that was the thing that happened to Lobos, and I laughed about it.
I laughed a lot. That was very funny. Yep.
Sang. I put it at the top because I personally think it's one of the finest. Okay, yes, sorry, Pookie. FF6. FF6 has one of the greatest last boss sprites from the 2D era that has ever been seen. It was so large, it took 3 screens, and it was intricate and beautiful and amazing, and each phase had different mechanics and was a difficult encounter, and swapped in new characters between each phase as they died to include all these characters you had been building. And then at the very top, encountering Kefka, and the very first thing he ever does is fall in 1 and sets everybody's HP to 1, and you just go, course, if you know it's coming, then you just go Merton, Merton. And then you win. Yes, the music. It's fantastic. Another song by Nobuo. Grand battle song. But Sekiro, Sword Saint Ishin. Let's start at the beginning. Even just the setting. The boss arena.
You walk back into that boss arena, bringing you back to the very first difficult encounter you have in Sekiro.
The foreshadowing is savage. Okay, before we get into it too far, Howling God just popped in saying, you know what a good last boss? The last final boss of Ace Combat 0. And I've never played it, so I don't know anything about it. I don't know if Pseudo or Rage has.
No.
Okay, so Howling God, I want you to tell us a little bit about it, but we do have to get going on our Sekiro last boss talk, because we got a lot to say about this. So we're going to read it. Please type it, but we're going to ramble as well. Yes, go ahead. The foreshadowing, entering the arena that you fought your first boss fight in ever. You fight the last boss fight in as well. And the first person you fight in that boss fight is the same enemy.
The first phase. It's so sick.
But then, due to the healing, rejuvenating waters, and it's all the same mechanics as Genichiro as well. So it's where you lost your arm and it instantly shows you how much stronger you've become. All of a sudden,
and
you know
not just in stat.
Yeah.
You've also become better at the video game.
Yeah. You fought this boss before, you kind of know his timings. All of a sudden, I can just get through this and be ready for a real boss after I'm through it. Like, this was the warm-up. This was the stretch before the workout. And that's all he is. He's just your stretch. Warm up your fingers so you don't sprain them with what's coming.
Which may or may not have happened to somebody in this stream.
It wasn't on that boss, but it did happen, yes. Yes. So, we enter Sword Saint Ishin Phase 1. He crawls out of Genichiro's skin young and rejuvenated. That's why he's so much harder in this one. And he's got the powers now of Tomo. Which is kind of cool. Phase 1, Sword. So he has, in Phase 1, a thrust attack, a spin attack, 2 grabs, I believe. But that's all 3.
One grab.
That's all 3 of the dangers. So you need to be aware of dealing with all of them. He has attacks that if you don't block will cause, or don't parry, will cause damage. So he has forced parry attacks. He has obviously the regular attacks of all varieties. He tests literally every mechanic he can test with a sword. After you beat that phase, he pulls out a spear. I think it's more of a halberd type idea, but it's a polearm, one way or another. And it completely changes the fight, and now you have to deal with a polearm enemy, who, if you've played Sekiro, you know the polearm enemies fight nothing at all like the sword enemies. At all. Completely different. He now has multiple different thrusts. I think he has 2 or 3. I know he has at least 2 different thrusts. He has grabs still. He has a spin.
More different sweep.
Yep, he has a different sweep. And he has multiple sweeps that can be parried or deflected as well now. So it changes his moveset entirely. It brings in another weapon type from the game. It actually changes the whole feel of the fight almost instantly. Yeah, it's where you lost your arm, as Pookie says. And then in the final phase, Tomo takes him, and now you've got to deal with the lightning mechanic, which is the last mechanic in the game. It's not used super often, but it's used more and more and more the closer you get to the end, to the point where even the dogs are using lightning in the final area.
Yes, and the gun.
Oh, yes, the gun. Yep. Yeah, so he uses ranged as well. Thank you, Pookie.
Glock Saint.
Yep. And fast. That's a tough parry. Glock Saint-ition, yes. Yeah. Literally every single mechanic in the game. Beautifully tested. And it's long enough that you do have to actually demonstrate knowledge of them. There's no... I mean, apparently there is cheese for the fight now. I know for a long time people couldn't cheese him even. The cheese was like, you know, a 15-minute strategy that could still easily get you killed. It was just a new approach. The lightning parry is sour satisfying. 100%. 100%. I love the lightning parry. I'm so happy in my kill video I got like 2 or 3 of them off. Yeah. Ace Combat Zero's final boss has an amazing background music. Okay. The duel becomes a joust over the air, which fits neatly with the Knight Arthurian theme of the whole game, and his personal relationship with the player character and his reasoning for fighting ties well with the overarching plot. But it's still testing... Like, what has the game taught you throughout the game? Does it teach you, you know, how to encourage you dodging missiles actively or having proper approaches? Or because if it...
What Deus is trying to ask is, does it fit with the mechanics of the rest of the game?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Then it sounds good.
Yeah. Sounds like a great boss fight.
That key of... And that's another thing, as we were talking about, fitting with the mechanics. Every attack that Sword Saint-ition does can be parried. Naughty Dog bosses. Exactly. I see you know what we're talking about. How's it going, Slad? How's it going? Fly's a super plane that encourages you to use the maneuvers you should have learned by the end. Yes. Excellent. It teaches you the jets are cool. Well, it's correct.
Also not wrong.
Speaking of lightning,
in the Shin fight, it really does touch on all of the different combat styles that you engage, that you encounter in Sekiro. You've got the ranged combat with the firearms. You've got the spear combat, obviously with Ishin's polearm, and you've got the sword combat, and then throwing the lightning in on top. And in the final phase really brings it all together as, you know, here is every way that we have tried to damage you in this game.
And they don't
deal with them all.
And they don't do anything cheesy, like take away your ability to parry. They didn't need to. Turns out just throwing every mechanic at the player that you have, if your mechanics are well built enough, will be difficult. And if that isn't challenging enough to the player and you have to make up shit for your last boss, then maybe your game's combat is weak. Is that fair to say? Am I out of line with that?
No, I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you have set up a core gameplay loop that in order to make the last boss unique enough, you need to throw out that loop or part of that loop, you done fucked up.
Or get more creative with what you have. If everything that you have isn't good enough, yeah, that's bad. That's bad. Speaking of lightning, although my relationship with the Shadow of the Colossus is not so great, the last boss from that game was very well designed, IMO. Don't know the boss.
All of them are. Shadow of Colossus is amazing. It's a brilliant game.
The only thing she had to complain about was the control.
Oh yeah, control's terrible, but it's a brilliant game.
And that's why I don't play it. I love control. I want a game that I can control well and die because of skill, like Risk of Rain 2
Or Sekiro.
or Sekiro. I love Sekiro. Hey, Pseudo, finish Sekiro.
Yeah, I'll get there eventually.
Do it. Do it.
Another mechanic I've hated in boss fights is ads. I feel like if your boss isn't strong enough that it needs additional enemies to make it a threat, it's time to go back to the drawing board.
Depends on the game.
My personal feeling on that is that I 100% agree with you. I hate boss fights with ads.
Depends on the game.
But there are, like I said, like I was going to say rather, and like Deus did say, it depends on the game. And there are ways in which ads can be used that are totally palatable. Rom, the vacuous spider in Bloodborne, in my opinion, is not one of them.
No,
I hate
agree
that
with you.
fight. I hate everything about that fight.
I don't like the ads in it. That's not a good one. But there are
I don't
good
like
uses
the
of
ads. I don't like Rom's moveset. I don't like the fact that it teleports around. I don't like the fact that you've got invisible walls in the boss fight. Like, no. Just do yourself a favor, Val. Skip Demon of Hatred.
Yeah, just do Ishin. Let's find the moon. Rom is not a good fight. Yeah, I agree. We all agree. Rom is not a good fight. She's not hard, just kind of boring. Doesn't fit with the... And it's not that she's terrible. I think it more stands out with her being bad just because of how good so many of the other bosses are in the game.
You like watching other people do the Rom fight. Does that count? It's nice to look at. It's very pretty. And yes, Demon of Hatred should have been in Bloodborne or Dark Souls.
Yep.
It should have been a Dark Souls 3 boss, in my opinion.
Yeah, it would make a good Dark Souls 3 boss.
It fits very, very well with the Dark Souls 3 style of doing things. And I haven't beaten Dark Souls 3 because I didn't like the Dark Souls 3 style of doing things.
It does kind of go back to... It's fairly in line with Dark Souls 1 once you get into it.
No, it's not.
It is. It doesn't seem it, but it is. It's like Dark Souls.
No, it's not.
It's like Dark Souls 1 on the Bloodborne engine.
No, it's very much sprinting around the boss arena, not actually fighting the boss.
But the
huge long range attacks, big splashes. You need to be maneuvering all the way across the goddamn boss arena the entire time. It's not like Dark Souls 1.
The boss fights, I agree, were a lot more movement. But the actual core combat on the way up to the bosses, it's a lot more rolling backwards like Dark Souls 1 than dodging forwards and attacking, which is better.
Yeah, in that sense. In that sense, I agree.
That's why I say that, because a majority of the time playing the game, which was exploring and running around and fighting average enemies, that's what it felt like. That was my experience. If I missed the stream on boss fights that are rivals or copies of the player character. Nope, we've never done one like that.
We haven't done that yet, but that's a good idea. We should do that.
A quick little good example of that is there's an arcade machine for Die Hard, I believe it was. And I think I've talked about this before, but it was one of those kind of last little special bosses that have a special memory for. And you kind of beat through the game. There is a final boss, and it is multiplayer, so it's co-op. It's 2-player, the same machine. But after you beat the final boss, you get to the end, and you fight over the character you've been trying to save the whole time, and you fight the other player that you've been playing with, if there is one. And it's just kind of a hilarious little way to end it. And it's kind of just like a mirror fight a little bit as well. You're the same character with the same abilities as well. It is now kind of your rival, because the person you've been co-opting the whole time is now your enemy. It was a nice little way to kind of have one last little fight. And I thought it was an interesting little kind of bonus boss, just making it be your friend.
Yeah. The Diablo 3 final boss, actually, for not liking the Diablo 3 game, I really liked the final boss.
Yeah, it totally stuck with the game mechanics that they've taught you so far.
Yep.
I got no problem with that.
And there's always a goal for the character. Things are always interactable. It may not be the boss himself that you're fighting, but you're always fighting something. You're always doing something. You're not just avoiding things. You're using all the abilities that you've gained within the game. There's no gimmicks.
A good example of this too is Pokemon. I forgot about. They've kind of had the same final boss formula for quite a while now, but you kind of always fight the Elite Four, um, as well as your rival towards the end, and they kind of just challenge you against every single Pokemon type, or at least most of them. And it's kind of like you need to be good at the mechanic of the game. You need to know what is strong against what, and you need to have your characters leveled up and ready for the fight. And it's they've been doing it over and over again, but it fits their that theme so well of training everyone up and learning what works well against what.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm just ranting in chat about how there hasn't been a good final boss in any fighting game.
Yeah, and I was following that. I was interested in that. So how do we do it better?
I mean, I think the input scanning is fine.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a problem with that.
You got to take the input somehow.
Yeah. But the thing that I have a problem with is they can string things together that you can't.
Yeah, no, they should definitely be constrained within the rules of the game like you are.
Or they can cancel things that you can't, or what have you. It's my big problem with the NPC invasions in Dark Souls 2 is very much along the same line.
Yeah.
They don't play by the same rules that you do.
Yeah, and that's not fair. No one wants to die because the game did something that you just literally can't do. Like, it just won't let you do that. It's not programmed to let you do that. That's not fun. Nobody wants that. I'm with you. Take that out. But I'm okay with the boss having moves from all the other characters. I like that. I feel
if they don't have weird mechanics and you're not facing anyone unique. Sure. Yeah, I totally agree with that. But at the same time, if they're breaking the rules of how you can interact with the game, that's not good.
Yeah, so if they moved faster but could only interrupt the same things you can, just moved faster than you, had some new abilities, things you've never seen before, maybe big blasty abilities, things you have to be more aware of. Tekken 6 Azazel is a confirmation of what you said.
The problem with fighting games originated from arcades, and arcade games were designed to steal your money, and the design mentality for home console fighting games hasn't really changed, even though they can't take your quarters. I 100% agree, Val.
Yep. They need to step back, look at the drawing board, and rethink fighting games. I agree. You don't need to throw it all out, but you do need to take a look at what you've got. Unfair for the sake of being unfair.
It makes it feel very artificial.
Yeah, it does.
There's been a few kind of fighting games that I've played, and most ones I have is their stamina. The ones I play are more like kind of grappling fighting games, and like their stamina will wear down less, or some moves just won't drain it at all. But yours still will too. So right out of the gate, you're at an unfair advantage, and it's just kind of frustrating because it's just like, well, it's not really like that character's fighting me. It's just I have to fight these weird artificial systems of, okay, well, they wanted to make this boss hard, so instead of having it be a proper challenge where we have to test mechanics against each other with fighting games, it's usually like if you're fighting an actual other person, you're both given the same limited tool set. Like there's only so much that you can really do. Granted that like a computer will have basically near perfect reaction time if you let it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you throw in the things of like, oh yeah, now it's just gonna for some reason do a whole lot more damage and also not lose stamina, as well as be invincible for a few extra frames on purpose, as well as a bunch of other kind of added stuff. It just gives you that frustrating artificial feel. You don't really feel like you're good or you're winning. You're kind of just feeling like, okay, well, I'm just getting stuff stacked against me, and it's not really making me better at the game. It's just making me kind of try to cheese down this boss.
Yeah. Right off the top of my head, as I'm thinking about that mechanic of just they get to recover stamina, make it even. Neither player gets to. Give the enemy an attack that takes some of your stamina or lets them recover stamina if it hits you. Now you've put it on the player's skill, so if you don't avoid and or block this attack that's coming in, they are going to get that upper hand.
Yeah, which is way more palatable because you can do something about it. If you can't do anything about it, it feels bad.
Yeah,
This is the same reason I always evangelize never taking away control from your player. The times that I have gotten frustrated at video games, notedly mostly multiplayer ones, is when they take my control away. Because I want to play the high mobility, high damage, ultra low health character. That is what I love to do. And as soon as I can't move, then I'm essentially out of the game. I just stop existing.
Yeah. MMOs have had to balance it carefully over the years. I think they've dealt with it really well for a PvP sense of crowd control, which is the diminishing returns. And it goes down quick in most. Like, if you're hit with one for like 30 seconds and it comes off you and you're hit within the next 30 seconds, it'll only last like 4 or 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think that that's a good way of dealing with it.
It's usually
you still end up
skill-based
with
too.
yeah. You still end up with situations in which your control is just taken away. Like you just take your mouse, your hand off the mouse and keyboard. You just can't do anything, which in a single player game would feel terrible.
Oh yeah, terrible.
And it still feels terrible in an MMO when you can't do anything. But from a team versus team balance perspective, it's much more palatable.
Yeah, it's actually almost essential in the team versus team battles just because of the amount of healing output and stuff that can exist in multiple quantities of members. Sometimes teams were just unkillable if you couldn't take one of them out for a few seconds and burst them down.
Yep, and that's something with team mechanics that a lot of people don't think of. It's a problem in Overwatch. People will approach Overwatch like they have traditional first-person shooters, where you just you pick the gun that you want to play with and you go. But that's not what Overwatch is about. Overwatch is about team compositions. Your team needs to make sense. It is a goal-oriented game. And if you're just going out there trying to get the most kills, you're going to lose.
Shao Kahn. That's a name I actually know because I played a fair bit of Mortal Kombat. I liked me some Mortal Kombat. I agree the last bosses were BS, but like we've said, it's a fighting game last boss. Still uses input reading. Well, again, the AI has to know what you're doing somehow. It's more the response that's expected.
What about the Smash Brothers Ultimate final boss? I haven't played Ultimate, actually.
I've probably done this, but for some reason I don't remember. What's the
Pluto's
name of it?
Smash
Can you
Brothers.
refresh
Yeah,
memory?
usually.
Is it probably Master Hand of some sort? But the Master Hand is usually, at least from all of them, has been a really like nice kind of finish to their kind of like, I guess, campaign run it is, or there's the single player thing was. But I'd probably say Master Hand's is a good boss. There are certain, like, there's a bunch of kind of like mini stuff that sets up to it too, where they will kind of throw a bunch of other enemies at you and special enemy types to really kind of test your ability to fight these kind of the different styles, because there's a lot of different characters in Smash. But then the Master Hand is just kind of this completely different thing that kind of messes you up, but still a little bit kind of constrained to like the same kind of idea of you can still block its attacks, you can still dodge its attacks, and you still do damage to it with all of your attacks. You just can't do things like grapple it. So it boils more to it's a good experience, and it leads up to it, and it's fun, but it can still be a bit kind of jarring and frustrating. But I think it's a bit done on purpose. It's also just kind of out of nowhere you just start fighting this hand, which was always kind of hilarious in the earlier games. But I think I'm watching a video on it now, and there's just a whole lot of stuff on the screen that is just kind of going nuts, and it looks like they're going a bit crazy with the Master Hand now. But I'd say it's okay. It's definitely not bad, but it doesn't always kind of fit what the Smash Bros. Fighting is. It's definitely just this completely different type of enemy, and the only way to fight it is to, of course, get to here. But it's all right.
It sounds like it would make our bad list, to be honest.
It's okay. I mean, like, it doesn't have to hit every single criteria to not be good and to not be bad. It is a challenge, and it tests every mechanic that you have. The only difference is that it's just not a character that you typically would fight as in Smash, but that's not also atypical of the way their single player works. They throw a lot of characters that you don't can really fight in the regular game mode, such as like a bigger version of it, or like a permanently metal version, or all this other kind of stuff as well. But
that's not so bad then.
Yeah, it's not like a perfect boss experience, but it's a good challenge. It's nice to have something unique that you can at least do it in single player.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds better though. It's just from what I was hearing, it was sounding like not even part of the game. Veronica in MK11 is a perfect example of how not to make a final boss in a fighting game. She's the only character in the game that's completely immune to everything. Can't knock her down, can't juggle her, can't use fatal blows, can't throw her. So literally the only way to damage her is just spam the 1 or 2 combo strings each character has that can't interrupt.
Yeah, that's
bad.
Terrible. They break all of their own rules.
Here's how you play the game until you get to here, and I don't play it that way anymore. That's exactly what we're talking about being bad. I'm almost ready to give away games. That's what I've been doing in the background.
Ooh, free video games.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end. I think my burger will be here soon. So let's give away some games. And then I'll eat some food. And then we'll play some Risk of Rain if you're going to be around. Would you like to play some Risk of Rain?
I most likely will.
Okay. I think Master Hand actually fits thematically in Smash Bros. If Smash Bros is the players playing with their toys, Master Hand is the player.
Yeah, the only part about that is that it shoots missiles and lasers and stuff. It explodes on death. So it's more of a mystical being rather than a person kind of playing with their toys, but it's definitely the point of it there is everyone's an action figure, and this is the stage they set for them to battle. And like, well, I want to, but I mean, if that's what it's going for, there's probably a lot more going on in the background for that is what the hand is rather than just playing with toys. It's just this mystical creature. Sometimes there's 2 of them. Sometimes it's crazy hand.
So you're saying your hand doesn't shoot lasers and rockets?
Apparently not.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Sometimes I wish. I'd be very good at laser tag.
I've been playing the warehouse demo all day. They aren't going to run out. There's no reason to pre-order. Yep.
Yes, more Risk of Rain after this.
Absolutely. Right after food. Not after this, but after food. I need to consume nutrients so that I can click on things.
Oh, Remnant from the Ashes is free on Epic Store. I'm going to grab me that.
Really? I was interested in that. I'm going to go buy that as soon as I'm done with this. So where's my shit so I can go get that before it's sold out? I got to get there before they're all sold out.
If they've got cross-platform multiplayer, I'll play with you guys. I enjoyed it. It is.
You can always just grab it again for free on Epic Store.
I guess that's true. I've tried to avoid making that Epic Store account. I've got.
Oh man, I'm so glad I made it. I've gotten a ton of games that I'm interested in playing for free through it. I'm totally cool with what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm not super happy about the whole 10-cent thing, but free games.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just not stoked that they're taking their Fortnite money.
So we never found Jesse Spaceman and Perry is Cold, and the list is getting a little long. We've got to keep these keys cycling. I don't see anybody shouting out going, wait, I know them! Or wait, that's me! 3, 2, 1.
Oh, Christo got Indigo Prophecy?
He did.
Man, we gotta find him.
No, I got to get the key from you. I sent you a request for the key, and I never got it. So just shoot me that.
Shit.
Yeah,
I'll get it right now.
Yeah, I talk to Christo like daily, so it's easy to give him that one. Let's get a new name. Maybe one we haven't seen yet? No, go. What? Oh, no. Okay, good. It was like, oh, you're using an ad blocker. And then I was like, piss off. And then it sent me back with an empty list. It's like, oh, I don't want to redo it. Friends don't let no, friends make friends play David Cage games and then laugh at them afterwards. That's a name that we see around here once in a while.
Raven again.
Yes! Play this game with your roommates and friendships.
On a game. Contact.
Yes. Good series.
Yeah, I love Worms. I played the shit out of the first Worms when they came out on the PlayStation, me and my friends blowing each other up all night. There's another name that we don't see in chat very often, but I know you're out there somewhere, and I know where you are on Discord, so we'll make sure to hit you there. It's the Jaggernaut.
Dun dun dun.
A copy of Hacknet, which looks like an interesting hacker game. The purpose of the game is to hack the network. You play a hacker, if I remember correct. Unless I'm thinking of something else. Hey! Orphan of Bosom! If you're lurking out there, you've got a free title as well. If I can't find you, I'll just do a Bloodborne stream and you'll show up.
Yeah, we'll find him eventually.
Oh yeah. Don't have to twist my arm to do a Bloodborne stream. Europa Universalis. 4X.
Ooh.
I believe.
Ooh. 4X time.
I love 4X.
And who else we got?
I think that was a gift sub. I don't see that name very often, but we'll do our best to get it to you.
Yeah, that looks like a random gift sub name.
Oh, it's a good game too. It's a good game. Me and Pookie have been...
Magicka. Magicka's so fun.
Oh, you know what? Excellent. Me and Pookie have been enjoying Magicka 2 a lot.
It's super trolly.
When we get to play together, we'll be able to do some 4-player. I'm sure we can get some shenanigans going that way. And Pine Jump for the last one. Go ahead.
When you could have games in your Steam inventory and not redeem them right away and trade them, Magicka DLC would go on sale for like 1 cent, and you could just gift 99 copies of it to someone as a kind of a prank or as a joke.
And then they just have 99 copies and they can't do anything about it.
You just can't. You can redeem one and then you can have all these copies just sitting in there. And I like to think that a bunch of my friends would have expired copies of those items just floating around in inventory. There's $1 for 99 copies or something. Sure, why not?
I mean, that's a great prank. That's the equivalent of when we were in high school and bought 100 penny candies for $1 and went around throwing them at people.
Another
you didn't eat the penny candies?
We got like 100 for ourselves, but we just got an extra 100.
Children.
They're literally a penny each. $1 for me, I got 100 of them. $1 for him, he's got 100 of them. $1 for between us, we've got 100 rounds of ammunition.
But you could have had another 50 candies each.
We didn't need them. They were
you gotta optimize your candy
more
intake,
than enough.
Another tidbit on the Steam inventory back then, when you would gift games, it would show up in your kind of profile feed when you got a new game. But when games were gifted to you, it didn't say someone gifted to them. It would just say that you bought this new game. So I would just gift really strange games, titles. Yeah. Like I think one of them was Secret of the Magic Crystal, and it's like a pony game. Like a magic game to one of my friends. He's like, okay, whatever, I accepted it, and then it just shows up right in his profile that he bought this game. But everyone's like, why did you buy this? I didn't know you were into this. He's like, oh god, no, I didn't.
Yeah, that could be even worse nowadays with the direction Steam went.
Oh yeah. That'll totally mess up your suggested queue.
Yeah, all your recommendations and suggestions every time you log in is just like cheap H games. You're like, oh, piss off.
They're all the ones that are like 247.
Yep. Yeah, Steam, you need to curate that shit a little bit better. Nobody wants that. It's all a joke. Stop with the money milking. Give us a better selection, or we might start leaving. We're getting libraries in other places now. It's happening. I have a considerable amount of games, actually, on the Epic Store without paying for any of them.
That was the point of what they were doing.
Yep.
bribe their way without having an actual proper.
That is exactly why they had to do it. Because nobody wants to use an account that has no games in it. And if you already have games in another account, that's where you're going to buy the game if you can.
I would be okay with that if their store wasn't complete shit.
Yeah, their store does suck. But
and like was actually a decent product rather than just kind of taking your weird Fortnite money and paying to bribe people over to it, which it's a business practice. It's just as business practice get, you can get kind of greasy.
No, I'm with you.
For it.
I haven't spent any money at the store, but I've been more than happy to accept all their free games. And now if Steam ever really, really drops the ball, then, you know, I've got a library of games somewhere still. PlayStation Store is getting bad like that too. There are so many bad shovelware games getting put on it. Yeah, these companies need to realize that ruins a store.
And the Nintendo Store is surprisingly full of shovelware. Like a lot of stuff that's like 60-cent titles that go, or games that go on sale for 60 cents, so they shoot to the top of the, top sellers list, but they're just like really weird, almost like less than flash game tier level of a game, and it's everywhere. You start scrolling through, and you're like, all right, I want the top sellers, which are usually like the good hot games right now. It's all this weird like shovelware of like 50 cent. Okay, you've run around in a single room, and I don't know how this made it into their store, but I guess it's here.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because Nintendo's usually known for having a fairly good standard of quality on their products and games.
Yeah, they didn't really have much third party for their store for the longest time, and now it's just kind of filled with weird kind of shovelware.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But GNOG, Magica, Europa Universalis, Hacknet, and Worms Revolution are all solid games. Pretty happy with
those
that.
are all good ones.
They're not quite Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy remastered, but they're still worth playing.
Solid video games.
Hope someone does soon. Yeah, I like giving away stuff. So I'm going to do my best to track down the rest of these people who I know I can just message and push it to. Rubido, you're here still, I think. Did he say bye? I don't think he did.
He said yikes.
Yikes. Yeah, he is still here. You haven't gotten your game. You still have Operation Flashpoint, Dragon Rising. Yeah, you won a game last week. Well, I haven't been able to give it to you. So I'll hit you on Discord shortly. Oh, did I? You did indeed. I think it's an FPS. I think.
If memory serves, it's a solidly okay FPS.
You got a game to jump into and explore a little bit for free. You've seen that game. There you go. You can go find some bugs and laugh at some things and see some things what not to do when you're making FPSs. Your dad owns it. There you go. Excellent. I'll hit you with that link. Oh. I hope that link works. I don't know if it'll work over there. That's actually a point. There are regions on some of these things from Humble.
We'll see.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, we'll find some way to get it to you.
We'll do something. Let me know. Anyway, 5:59. That's like right on the dot. Let's get. It's a Steam code. There is a way. Okay.
We got that.
Yep, it's a Steam code. The link just puts the Steam code in for you, so you can do it. You can do it. I'm gonna go eat. I'm gonna go smoke. I'm gonna go set up the green screen. I'm gonna be back to play Risk of Rain. Will you be here, Rage?
Oh yeah.
You make that time frame?
As far as I am, I may also have some eating to do and
Okay.
whatnot.
Yeah, my burger not even here yet, so you got a little bit of time. Pseudo, you busy tonight?
I got some stuff to do, but I might be around in the night, depending on how
Cool.
how late
Cool.
stuff runs. I might jump in for a few sessions.
I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. I'm good to go. I like this
Awesome.
game. Let's build
It's a
some
good
Twitch
game.
skills, yeah.
It is
And
very
all
fun.
of you who want to watch, hey, let us know. As long as we don't have a full room, I'm more than happy for you guys to jump in and play with us. More is always merrier in this game. 12-hour stream, please. Okay, we'll do a subathon. How's that?
Yeah.
You can
Yeah,
keep
we'll
it
start
up.
with however long we want to sub, and then or however long we want to play. Then if you keep subbing, we'll keep streaming.
Yep, absolutely. 5 minutes per. I think that's about what most people do. 5 minutes per.
Yeah, 5 minutes per seems fair.
Yep. Okay. Bring your wallet board. You can do 12 hours, I'm sure. You got this. You got this. Just bet on Boston. You'll be fine.
I will.
All right. So, thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out this Saturday. I had a ton of fun talking about bosses. I hope you learned a little bit or have a little bit better insight into the bosses as you approach them on thinking, is this actually a good one or not? And if you ever disagree with us, by all means, come let us know. See you later, Pookie. See you later, Val, Rubido, Board, everybody else lurking. I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
May all your shots be headshots.